We'll talk some Sixers now. Chris Sheridan is the Sixers beat writer for NJ.com. He is taking over that beat at a very good time, Pete Thompson.
Heck yeah. So here's the deal. You're going to take over the Sixers beat. Okay.
Right. Here we go. Down the stretch they come. Chris Sheridan, NJ.com, covers the Sixers in the midst of a 10-game winning streak, trying to make it 11 tonight. No Dario, no Joel. Chris, welcome aboard. How are you, pal?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you today?
Doing well, as we know this team is kind of playing their best, some of their best basketball, 10 in a row, but they're missing some key pieces down the stretch here. And you wonder, with the schedule they have left and where they kind of are sitting in the playoff, do they have enough ammunition to overtake Cleveland with 6 games left to go for them?
Well, whether they overtake Cleveland or not, Mike, I think the key thing is you finish 3rd or 4th so that you get home court advantage in the first. You want to have the buzz in your building going into game 1, right before that tip-off and have the place be electric. Do you have to overtake Cleveland to finish 3rd or 4th? No, you don't. You just got to stay ahead of Washington. You got to stay ahead of Indiana, and the Cleveland-Philly thing will shake itself out. It'll be interesting this weekend to see, how the teams do when they match up against each other. The building should be pretty electric when LeBron comes in. But to me, it doesn't matter who you play in the first round. It matters where you finish in the standings, and you really want to open at home. And I think that the Sixers, with as well as they're playing right now, are poised to do that. They haven't looked like they've missed Embiid, one single bit, and different guys have stepped up in the game since he went down. Marco Bellinelli shot 9 for 10 on Sunday, and some of these shots were just crazy shots. JJ Redick is showing you what a leader he is and what a solid player he is, and Ersan Ilyasova has stepped into the starting lineup, and he gives you another guy who's been around. He's been playing professionally, Mike, since he was 14 years old, a kid in Turkey. So, look, this is a strong team with a lot of depth, and the reason you have a lot of players on your team, 15 guys on your roster, is because guys get hurt, and you got to turn to other guys from time to time. And you're seeing that now, like you said, with Dario out, and you're going to see it with Joel out likely for the rest of the regular season. How can they play differently, and can they sustain what they've been doing? Yeah,
Chris Sheridan at Sheridan Hoops on Twitter. He's covering the Sixers now for NJ.com. Chris, what are you hearing about Joel? So many people, it's kind of like a mystery here because in the past, NBA players have had this injury, and it varies. I mean, some guys have missed a game or two. Etan Thomas missed almost 30 games. Where do they feel that Joel fits on this scale of time missed?
Well, that all comes down to what the doctors say. And when you have a fractured eye socket, you have to have surgery. And when you have surgery, afterwards you have swelling. And then, it depends on how long the swelling lasts before you can really put a timetable on when the guy can come back. It's you can't jump at it and say, well, he'll be back in 2 weeks, or he'll be back in 4, or he'll be back in 8, without knowing what happens at first in the surgery. So the surgery has taken place, and anybody who's ever had surgery knows the swelling will be with you for a couple days, and then how quickly it subsides, that's up to the way your own body chemistry works. But it's going to be something that the Sixers aren't going to take a risk on. Certainly, they're not going to bring him back for the last regular season game if there's a risk that he gets elbowed in the eye or bumps somebody, and he's going to refracture that eye socket and miss the entire postseason. So you really just you be cautious, and you listen to the doctors, and you keep an eye on the swelling, and then you start looking at masks and what's the mask that's going to work best for him, that's going to allow him to have a full field of vision, but also be able to play his game and be able to prevent getting a worse injury from getting hit in the same spot. It's a physical game. He's going to get hit in the head at some point. It's a matter of, does he get hit in the eye socket again, and then what happens?
Yeah, and we had Richard Hamilton on over the weekend. He was talking about, yes, he played with a mask and he kept it on, but it took a little while for him to get adjusted to that mask. I mean, Joel literally is probably going to have to throw that thing on and for the first time ever, get out there and wear something like that, and that might take a little while to get used to.
Absolutely. Different guys have had to wear them at different times, and I remember covering the Game 7 of the Pistons-Spurs NBA Finals down in San Antonio. Rip always wore that mask, right?
Yep.
But there was about 3-4 minutes left in the fourth quarter of Game 7. He ripped that sucker off and threw it on the sideline. And that guy never took his mask off. But there comes a time when you rip it off, when you just say, I gotta have my whole field of vision, and I gotta be able to see everything. And this thing is hindering me. There's a time in every player's when a player says to himself, you know what, I got to just get this thing off. I got to take it to the next level. And if it takes taking off this mask, then I'm going to rip this mask off. So everybody's different. And, you put eyeglasses on somebody who's never worn eyeglasses before, what's going to happen? They're going to lose them. And they're going to have their field of vision reduced. And they're going to have to, adjust the way they live their lives, because if you never worn glasses before, all of a sudden you need them. It's an enormous adjustment. So, look, that'll be the same for Joel when he does get the mask on, and then it's a matter of his comfort level, just physically and visually, as to how he adjusts to playing with one of those things.
I can imagine, very popular these days for bigger fellows like us two here, Chris, wearing CPAP machines at night, wearing that mask, adjusting to that, and having to sleep with that thing. I'm sure Joel's going to have to get used to, and it'll be interesting to see how, not to mention such a big man, 7'2" with that mask. He's going to have such a presence out there.
It's not a bad analogy, yeah. But by the way, skinny people wear CPAPs too. Chris Sheridan's with us. Hey, Chris, Mike and I were talking about Ben Simmons, and certainly against the Hornets, the 15 assists, a career high. But is he taking on a more aggressive role with Joel out, or is the game just slowing down for him now?
Well, 15, he's done that 4 times. And tonight the game should be pretty wide open, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get 16. But he has to be more of a focal point of the offense as a creator, because you can't give it to Joel, who's probably the best low post scorer in the NBA. So he's got to find other things. He's got to create and draw doubles and get the other team's defenders to come off the shooters, and then he's got to find the shooters outside. But with the way this guy throws passes, he throws 40-foot passes like it's a 10-foot chest pass, and he throws them hard and fast, and he's got an uncanny ability to get into the lane and create and get guys off of him. Even if they're laying off, he'll still get guys away from him, and then he sees the court so well. He's got the best court vision I've seen since maybe Jason Kidd came into the league. And, coincidentally, Jason Kidd came into the league and didn't have a jump shot. But by the time Jason Kidd was finished in the league, he was a spot-up three-point shooter for the New York Knicks. So what's interesting to me is as we watch Ben Simmons and his career go along, is he able to refine the parts of the game that are lacking? He's 0 for 11 on threes this season. They've all been like half-court heaves or full-court heaves at the end of a quarter. And the guy knows he can't shoot a three, and he doesn't take them, but he still shoots a very high percentage, which tells you he's smart. He knows what he can do, and he knows what he can't do. But what he really does best is he's so athletic, and he passes the ball with such strength. There are very few players who I've ever seen come along like this guy with this type of size, and look, he's an electric player. He's going to be a guy that Philly fans are going to love watching for a long, long time. And as to how he adjusts his game while he's playing without Joel, look, he made a nice adjustment on Sunday. The 15 assists speak for themselves, but a lot of those assists led to dunks too. So, look, if the Sixers are out and running and playing their game and keeping their turnovers down, they're as good as anybody in the Eastern Conference. The thing you got to worry about if you're a Sixer fan is, Simmons, because he has the ball in his hands so much and because he's so inexperienced, how's he going to be able to perform in the playoffs when teams are going to really scheme against him? They're going to play off of him, and they might actually foul him and put him on the. Van Gundy tried that during the regular season, and the teams are going to look for ways to not let him hurt them, and different teams will try different things, and it's all going to be brand new for Ben. Inhibits his game, or is it going to be something that really inspires him to boost his game? That's one of the big unanswered questions that we have to look forward to in the postseason with Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that. Some of that hack-a-Ben strategy did come out earlier in the season. You know, Chris, you talk about electric player that Ben Simmons is. Maybe nobody was more electric in the game than Dr. J back in the day, and Mike and I were lucky enough to catch up with him earlier in the show, and he compared Joel Embiid to Moses Malone in some senses when he is in the low block. I guess my question, though, would be not comparisons, but Moses was the difference maker for that Sixers team to push them over the top and win a title. Can the Sixers expect to win a round if Embiid is not on the floor or if he's not 100%?
Pete, some of that broke up. I heard that the Dr. J, who was actually my favorite player when I was a kid, I was an NBA fan.
Yep.
He compared him to Moses Malone, and I think it's a valid comparison in a lot of ways because Moses was such a great low post scorer and such a force. You know, Moses go out there and take 18 shots and make 15 of them. That was not uncommon, and you've seen some lines like that from Joel as well. What makes Joel different is he can go outside, and like a lot of the big men in the NBA these days, everybody goes outside and shoots it. You know, before he got hurt, DeMarcus Cousins was hitting threes at a nice clip. Marc Gasol shoots threes every single night. So the role of the big man in the NBA has really, really evolved since the days of Moses Malone, and so it's a valid comparison in that he can take you to the promised land. He can lead you all the way there because he's so good in the post. The difference is Joel's game stretches all the way out to the three-point line, and Moses, if he took any three-point shots in his NBA career, I don't think he was hitting them at the same clip that Joel can hit them.
Yeah, we've had Coach Jimmy Lynam on, and he's raved about Joel Embiid inside and outside and what he could do. The second part of it that got cut off, Chris, there was that Moses was that difference maker that really kind of like Pete Rose put the Phillies over the top. Moses put the Sixers over the top when they won their title. Can the Sixers, this current group of Sixers, really expect to win a round if Embiid is not on the floor or if he's not 100%?
Oh, absolutely. You know, why not? Like I said before, you got 15 guys on your team. You got to use all 15. You know, that's if it comes down to it, and you lose your best guy or you lose your two best guys, you still got to go play the games. And this is a pretty deep Sixer team. I mean, let's say, God forbid, Ben Simmons gets hurt. Well, guess what? You got the number one pick in the draft ready to step in, Markelle Fultz, and he can take over and be a 40-minute per night point guard, and then you can put TJ McConnell in as the backup. So you have to have redundancy on your roster, and you have it for a reason. But you know, if I'm a Sixer fan, I'm pretty much not satisfied unless this team makes it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then anything beyond that is gravy. But I don't think they should win just one series. I think they should win two.
Now, besides Simmons and Embiid, which Sixers player do you think needs to contribute the most for them to achieve that goal? Then
it's got to be the shooters. The shooters, you know, got to provide them with 23 threes a night. Whether it's Redick or whether it's Covington or whether it's Ilyasova or Bellinelli, the 3-pointer is so important in today's NBA. I mean, look at the Golden State Warriors and what they do with it. That's about all the evidence you would ever need. So it's not really going to be one guy, but it's going to be one component, and that's 3-point shooting. If you're not hitting your threes, you're still shooting them, but they're missing, and there's a lot of long rebounds being created off of those, and that allows your opponent to go out and kind of run the floor and get long rebounds and have a lot more transition opportunities. But if those threes are going down, you can get back. You set up your defense. You don't allow the other team to get out in the open court like the Sixers like to do so much. So again, it's not really one guy. It's one component, and that's going to be 3-point shooting.
Chris Sheridan's with us, covers the Sixers for NJ.com. Sixers and Nets tonight. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Chris, you mentioned Ben Simmons and how, you know, he doesn't shoot the ball all that much, and that teams might approach him differently come playoff time. How do you think teams might approach him in the playoffs with the way that he doesn't shoot the ball all that much? Are they going to challenge him to shoot the ball a little bit more? And it doesn't really matter with the way he passes the basketball if teams change it up on him.
Well, they're going to lay off him and probably stay home on the shooters. if let's say you got a guy guarding Simmons, you instruct him, don't go any, stay 8 feet away from him.
Right.
And just force him to shoot jump shots. And see if we can get him to do that. Now, teams have tried that during the regular season with Ben, and he hasn't taken the bait. He hasn't succumbed to the temptation to, well, if they're going to leave me this open, I'm going to make him pay, because he knows what he knows what he can do, and he knows what he can't do. And so I think it'll be, a lot of it will depend on the personnel that the other team has. Do they have a lockdown defender that they can just put on him, who's going to, be all over him for 82 feet? Or if they don't have a guy who can do that, what other ways can you scheme to make Ben try to make rookie mistakes? And whether it's fouling him, whether it's playing off him, anything, whether it's hounding him for 82 feet, teams are going to try anything and everything. And whatever doesn't work in the next game, that's why they have film sessions and 72 assistant coaches on each team. You got to come up with ideas, and you got to try new things. And when you're going up against a superstar player who's a freak athlete, who's a 6'11" point guard, nobody has much experience defending against that and trying to stop it. So it's going to be a challenge for any opponent the Sixers run into in the postseason.
Now, Chris, you covered the league nationally for a ton of years, and are people around the league surprised at where the Sixers are right now? Do they think that they are ahead of schedule or a little bit better than they anticipated at this stage of, as many people like to dub, the process?
No, I think everybody understands and recognizes that the process is a process, and it's going to eventually pay dividends. And some of the guys that they picked, they missed on. Nerlens Noel and Jahlil Okafor, but other guys they didn't. Embiid they waited on. They drafted and they waited on him. Simmons they drafted and they waited on him. And then some of the guys that Sam Hinkie was able to bring in, turned out to be keepers. Covington for one, T.J. McConnell for another. They went through so many different guys on this roster over the years during all that losing. You would think that maybe a couple more would have stuck, but at the end of the day, when you're picking as high in the draft as the Sixers have numerous years in a row, you're going to end up with a gem or two, and they've certainly ended up with those, two of those guys in Joel and Ben.
Yeah, they are certainly difference makers, and right now they are 4. Is there a better matchup for them, in your opinion?
I think Washington's probably the best matchup for them. They're still reacclimating themselves to having John Wall back, and Bradley Beal's a terrific player, but Gortat's not going to be able to do much against Embiid, and Mahinmi, their backup, isn't going to be able to do much in terms of being able to stop Embiid. And I think Washington's probably the easiest opponent. I think Indiana's kind of sneaky good, but does Indiana have the amount of talent, just pure talent, to match what Philadelphia has? No, heck no. So probably either of those teams would be the best first-round matchup. What I want to see is a matchup between Cleveland and Philadelphia in the first round. I want to see those two teams finish 4 and 5, because that'd be about as entertaining as a first-round series you could have. And, for me, I want to cover exciting games that are toss-ups every single night. I don't want to cover games where one team goes in as a prohibitive favorite and shouldn't have much problem, getting past a lesser team. And I think certainly that's the case with Washington and Indiana, and probably even so with Miami, too, because Miami's in that mix, and Hassan Whiteside's on a minutes restriction, and he's upset about it. And so they got their own problems down in Miami. I think Philly would be able to handle any of those teams with relative ease. It's the Cleveland first-round matchup that, if I'm a Sixer fan, I start to get a little shaky about.
April 14th, the NBA playoffs. Chris Sheridan, NJ.com. He's at Sheridan Hoops, covering the 76ers. They take on the Brooklyn Nets tonight. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Chris, appreciate it, man. Thanks so much.
All right, fellas. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to tonight's game. Should be a real high-scoring affair. And don't be surprised if Ben Simmons gets 16 assists, which will be his career high. The Nets tend to play loose, so that's gonna only open things up for him.